Right Night is a talk show with published authors, writers, and content creators discussing both the creative and technical sides of writing, as well as the industry surrounding it, from novels to screenplays to comics and more. And now, here's your host, author Travis I. Sivart.
And welcome to What Right Night. Sounds like Cogsley's had a drink or two himself. He was hiccuping a little bit there. Tonight's topic is going to be tropes, cliches, stereotypes, and archetypes. We'll get to that in a moment, right after I let you know that this is an adult show with adult language, humor, and topics, so we might be immature. That's that. Also, want to let everybody know who's joining us via podcast that we are recording with a live chat audience who may be giving comments. When you hear this noise, it means I want to read some comments, though we might read them without the bell because we're rebellious like that. See what I did? Rebellious.
Rebellious. Yeah, it's
thank
good.
you. It's
That's a humdinger right there.
There we go. Yeah. Okay. Other than that, yeah. Okay. So I'm Travis Sivart, and I am happily chipping away at the second book in the Silver and Smith Chronicles, where the world-weary silver bounty hunter and billionaire goes across the world having adventures and runs across Henrietta Hank Smith, who is a young idealistic archaeologist, and they discover artifacts of power long forgotten in the past, all while living in a world 20 to 30 years in the future where cyberpunk is just coming into existence. So borderline cyberpunk and dystopia adventure with a feel of Indiana Jones, Pirates of the Caribbean, Guardians of the Galaxy, and other such things. Now let's go ahead and let Aaron introduce himself.
Hi, Aaron Kennedy, author of Persona Non Grata, first book in the Ships of Valor series. Currently writing the Icarus Black series, set in the same universe. Been a technical writer for 25 some odd years. Michael.
Hey, everybody. Michael Thompson, independent author and illustrator. World of the Orb, Winslow Hoffner's Incredible Encounters, and the Chicken Boy series. This is my latest book, Chicken Boy and the Might of the Monkey Man. Check it out on michaelthompsonbooks.com. Ordinary chickens fed radioactive birdseed, and he and his pals save the world from monsters and mad scientists in a town where nothing's ever quite normal. michaelthompsonbooks.com, MICHAELTHOMPSON books.com.
And that is grade A writing right there. Now let me do the thing here for... I want to remind everybody you can find my books at bit.ly/TravisBooks. That's bit.ly/TravisBooks. And Aaron's books at bit.ly/Aaron Kennedy. That's bit.ly/AARON and Kennedy, like the infamous president who was also a gunslinger in a previous life. Well, he's on the dime. Anyhow. Tonight's, I want to say, what's everybody else's project that they're working on? Or what are you reading? What game are you playing? Let us know your creative outlet at the moment. Other than that, don't forget to check out Talk of the Tavern and Stealing for Survival, our other podcasts that are out there on Pandora and your other favorite podcast distributors? Whatever. Anyhow, tonight's topic. We're looking at tropes, cliches, stereotypes, and archetypes. And a lot of people cringe with this, going, oh, I don't want to just be like everybody else. But we're going to point out the reason that tropes, cliches, stereotypes, and archetypes exist. And we might take them as a group, we might take them individually and break them up. Tropes being what's expected within certain genres. For example, fantasy quite often have that young farm boy, the older mentor, a magical thing, and you go from there. Oh, and a princess. Generally a princess. Cliches being those things that have been done so much you almost cringe, but in the right place in the right time? Well, stereotypes. I almost want to just start talking about it, but I'm not going to. Stereotypes and archetypes kind of hand in hand, two sides of the same coin. Stereotypes being the standard thing that you run across that people just automatically assume. Archetypes being a construct of a character concept and why they all work. No. Oh, I guess I'll write this in my notes when we get to me. I don't know, who wants to go first? Who's excited?
You can hop in if you want, if you're bubbling over with that.
Well, I hate to go first because I've just did all the talking.
Let me set the tone.
Go ahead, Aaron.
I like to set the tone with like one word, like elves.
Mm-hmm.
Because you say something like that, and friggin' it instantly goes, oh, because you get this picture in your mind of. Yeah, well, my wife just said Keebler.
Santa's helpers.
Santa's helpers. Right. Because you got all these different things that could be something else, or like because it really depends on the context, of course. Because we're thinking because we're geeks and we're thinking D&D, or friggin' you could go with or what was it? The movie Bright on Netflix. Because the elves on there were very. I mean, we got different types because you can set it up depending on what you're talking about. Context is important. I mean, they could be cookie making elves or they could be toy making elves. They could be Santa's helpers. Do what you want, but it all kind of sets it up. But you get the pointy ears, which is kind of racist. When you're talking stereotypes, they can be short elves or they can be freaking dark sun elves, which are really tall. Modern elves in D&D are actually strangely tall, which nobody ever reads and looks at that.
Tolkien elves were tall.
Yeah.
Tolkien elves were tall. Friggin' I'm taking the hobbits to Isengard. They're taking the hobbits to Isengard. What do your elven eyes see? Things like that. But you just grab one word and you pull it across to there. Or another word like vampires.
Right.
And you go from sparkly to Bela Lugosi to friggin' Nosferatu. To friggin' Keanu Reeves. All these ones. Gary Oldman. And you get a wide variety with Gary Oldman.
Sexualized Anne Rice.
And this is nothing against her, but she kind of portrays all men to be gay. She just doesn't write men masculine. Just like there are a lot of men that don't write women well, she doesn't write men well.
Well, not in a variety.
Correct.
Yeah. It's I mean, she absolutely wrote true to certain men, but not all men. But none of us write all characters to fit all people. That's ridiculous to assume. So anyhow,
right.
Finish your thought.
But it kind of hits on our theme. Here's what I'm talking about, and we could just grab any kind of setup. Your werewolves. Hey, Teen Wolf. Teen Wolf's a current TV series, or maybe a current TV. I know there's a TV series, but we can go back to Michael J. Fox and Jason Bateman and that Teen Wolf, and those are completely different things, and it's awesome. So there's my thoughts. Let's get this party started.
I have nothing to say to that. Michael, do you have anything to say to that, or do you want to jump in with your thoughts?
I think he had a great point that you say these things like these archetypal what pops into your mind when you say vampire. You get the pointy teeth, you get the pale visage, the certain abilities, able to turn to bats, and it's
come closer to your mic, please.
Sorry, it's a shared lexicon of ideas merging across literary adventures that we get these ideas, and we're building upon them. We're expanding them, making our own.
So let me go with this. It seems like our opening thoughts really aren't specific. They're kind of generalized here. So let's break it into categories here. Let's talk about tropes first. Tropes, as I said, are kind of expected things for a certain genre. I used fantasy as an example with the young farm boy or somebody who's not in the thick of it, and you get to explore the world and learn about the world through this younger person's eyes as they learn about it and explore it. And then you have the elderly mentor, the wizardly type, and then you have a magical artifact, quite often a sword. Um,
Well,
mhm.
so with the trope, things that we expect,
Right,
it's a certain expectation.
Joseph Campbell, Hero's Journey.
right. The bullet points of your genre that you don't have to have them all in there, but you probably should have some. Otherwise, people that pick it up just for the genre are kind of like, what am I reading?
Right. And it may be that it just naturally sort of happens that way. The hero's journey was something that was recognized among many different stories. It's like you can kind of when you look at a story or the stories that were really successful or widely told, you can see that these are recurring tropes.
A quick comment from Wordwin there. Tropes and stereotypes are great for quickly introducing a concept that the reader is familiar with. Then the writer can have fun subverting them.
Absolutely.
And that is a great pivot point, the fulcrum of the teeter-totter of your story, to bring those tropes in so you automatically bring your readers into a world that they understand, or a character that understands how things are supposed to work. We have this preconceived notion, and that's where your tropes fit in. Now, let's talk about cliches. Now, cliches are overused terms that we've heard so much, terms or ideas or concepts that we've heard so much we're almost tired of it. But I'll tell you what, when I write a character and I take an archetype, you have your military guy, there's an archetype. You have your snooty politician, there's your archetype. You have your Weasley con man, there's an archetype. And then you overlay a stereotype. This, for me, and stereotype being, again, certain things that you might expect because of ethnic background. Elves. We're going to use elves just to keep it non-PC but PC. Elves,
But two different patterns.
right. You expect elves to be haughty and arrogant and superior and clean, and you expect dwarves to be a little more gruff and serious, but a little bumbling. So you have these stereotypes in your head. And for me, to introduce a second tier or a third tier character, I delight in stereotypes and cliches. Because in 2 sentences, you can drop a character and everybody knows what this character's all about. They've seen this character before, and you don't have to fill in the blanks, not like your primary characters. I do not recommend using stereotypes and cliches for your protagonist, your main characters, unless if you're going to go, here's somebody that you all know. And then you break those, either by the story tearing them out of their comfort zone, where you've built them, or by them just being more than what the surface shows. Gentlemen, thoughts on that?
No, it's a great point. You introduce this friggin' two-dimensional character, and then you add nuance to them over time. You're slowly shifting them from a cardboard cutout of themselves, and then you're rounding them. Every time you get a glimpse of this person, you're just adding a layer.
Han Solo is a
But
great example of
Yes.
a stereotype. He's the selfish, driven by money, greedy con artist. But
Yep.
as you get to know him, there's definitely more there. There's layers there. And even in the end of the first movie that he appeared in, Star Wars New Hope, Episode 4, by the end, he's gone against his stereotype to return to the fight when there's not an offer of money and reward. He did it because it was the right thing to do.
Right.
Well, when we first see him, he's calm, he's cool, he's collected. He killed a guy in cold blood. And
Great
then
intro.
we see him run like a coward. What? No, am I wrong?
No, while yelling at his best friend and insulting his best friend.
Right.
Actually,
But he
his
does it out of
conscience.
sight.
No.
Right, exactly. We see him do that. And then when his friggin' self-interest is escalated up, he's offered a reward. He goes into the friggin' lion's den to rescue the princess.
And he hates being questioned, hates his judgment, his ideas being questioned. This is often represented in C-3PO, who is the dry voice of logic, and Solo is not a logical person. He's
got pure intuition.
Right.
That's right.
Right. But his stereotype, it's steeped in intuition. The con artist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But when you add these extra layers, he's much more. So this is a great way to take a stereotype and make somebody go, I know that character.
Yeah.
And then make him into something that the person loves.
Yeah. And the more time you spend with a character, the more real they become. And it's the same as spending time with a person.
Mm-hmm.
The more time you spend with them, the more you learn about them.
And
even as the author, like, the more you write, the more you may learn.
And that's what tropes do for a world or a storyline or a scenario. Tropes is the stereotype of a story.
Yeah.
And then you get to add those elements that blossom it into something different or twist it, force it into something different.
Right. Yeah. And I like what Wordowin said about subversion, because these are all things, it's subverting what's expected.
Do you want to read the whole quote there?
Sure. Yeah. Wordowin said, "Tropes and stereotypes are great for quickly introducing a concept the reader is familiar with. Then the writer can have fun subverting them." And this certainly happened in Winslow a lot. I think inversion is a lot of the theme of the first book in Winslow Hoffner's Incredible Encounters, even in the first chapter. And so our main character, John, when he first meets Winslow, he has a pretty quick idea of what he's doing there, why he's there, who Winslow is. And the more he listens to Winslow tell his story, the more John's point of view starts to change. And John is the skeptical journalist. But as he listens to Winslow tell him a story about a fire-breathing fish, and John starts to believe it, then his perception of Winslow and his perception of the world starts to alter. And Winslow, when he walks out onto the porch for a smoke break, so John thinks he just blows on this strange instrument, which becomes important later. And when he goes to the fridge, he gets root beer, and he only drinks root beer. He almost exclusively subsists on it, and he doesn't curse. And all of these tall tales that is sort of would that be a trope, cliche? I guess a cliche about Fisherman's Tale, tall tale.
I don't know. A little of both.
I
A little bit of both. You expect it to be aggrandized. You expect it to be. The expectation is that the story is
bigger than the reality.
Yeah, it's augmented. But in Winslow's case, it's all true. All the legends are true. And in fact, later on, Winslow is shown to be a horrible liar, and it's like he's laughably bad at lying.
That's nice. Nice.
Well, I mean, part of this topic that we're discussing is the fact that there's a lot of overlap between these sections and things, and that's why I led with the elves comment.
Yeah, that's a good way to open.
So, it almost feels like John, your character John, right? To take my earlier reference to fantasy, you have the wide-eyed farm boy who doesn't realize how the real world works. He's got this set viewpoint, and it feels like Winslow is his wizardly mentor, almost in this situation.
So. Mm-hmm.
And the magical sword would be the creatures.
Right.
Or perhaps the truth is the magical sword in this one.
I think it might be the truth. Yeah. The world is not what you thought it was, and this all unfolds in just chapter 1. And then it's like, what are you going to do with yourself afterwards?
That's a great question there. And I hope that comes play even more in book 3 that you recently announced that you're starting to plan.
Yeah, I've started writing book 3, and environment is a way to, as the environment transforms around them, you see it's a personification of where they've come. Like in book 1, John is forced into the mailroom, and then in book 3, the mailroom becomes like this I mean, kind of like a haven, you know what I
Right.
mean? So they made it a cool place, and they're totally in the zone. They're doing their thing.
It's
And
their
so
favorite bar or pub where they get together to
yeah,
mesh ideas.
yeah, and I love a location that has character like
Hmm.
that. And I mean, there you go. Like the mailroom starts as like the archetypal mailroom, which is like not a place you want to be. Yeah, John's getting paper cuts every 2 seconds, and then it transforms. It has its own arc, I guess. You know.
Yeah, it definitely does. If you're using a repeated location to let it grow as the characters grow, I think that's very pleasing to your audience, to your readers. Now, what about you, Aaron? In this universe you're creating, um, of course, the ships physically are almost static and eternal and not changing physically, but they're changing in other ways. What archetypes or stereotypes or even tropes are you using initially, and how are you twisting them to make it, well, something worth reading?
Well, okay, so I've set it up as I work under the. I took a kind of a couple different approaches to this. One, you've got with Icarus Black, I've taglined it as it's Harry Potter in space, I've really set it up in that regards in a lot of ways. Star Wars is a fantasy novel; it's not a sci-fi novel. It's all space wizards and friggin' westerns and all that kind of thing. Icarus Black has a very much fantasy feel. It is a hero's journey from start to finish. We have a young hero. Now, you don't have a lot of sci-fi elements because it's not sci-fi; it's pulp. Um, so I took it from that element. She's existing in a fantastical world. She starts off on an asteroid field, so I took it from that realm. You've got this ship, who is an adolescent, much like her. It's got to grow and expand, and it's essentially becoming much like a wizard would. It's got to age. Oops. I think I lost you guys. Oh,
Nope, nope,
still
you're
there?
good. Keep going. We got
Okay.
your voice.
Yep.
Yeah.
She's experiencing the journey. Spoilers, but friggin' mentors come and mentors go, um, because they have to.
That's an interesting point in itself. As you move from one book to the other, your young, wide-eyed farm boy. Well, I'll reference Star Wars again. You
Mm-hmm.
know, in book one, you have Obi-Wan Kenobi as the elderly wizard. In book
Yes.
two, Luke is a man now. He's no longer a
Mm-hmm.
boy. He's no longer wide-eyed and surprised by everything. But now he gets another mentor that steps into
Yes.
place.
Yoda.
And
Mm-hmm.
in, I'm sorry, movie two. In the third movie, Return of the Jedi, he is his own mentor at this point in time, but he's still constantly referring back to the
Right.
lessons he learned from these other people. So as your
Yeah.
character grows and the story progresses beyond one single story, it shows the value of you're constantly learning and the things your mentors change or your mentors still influence you.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and that's the big thing. I've got a master's in leadership, so I've a couple things that I've been working on is tying the because all of it all plays into each other. Friggin' these 9 books tie into Maslow's hierarchy of friggin' needs. When you first start off, your needs are based on your physical needs.
Mm.
She's young. Friggin' her needs are survival. As she goes up the chain, she's trying to reach that upper tier of spiritual needs. What she needs as an adult when she's no longer dependent on trying to find her next meal, trying to find warmth. Um, what she needs for self fulfillment. But there's steps in between that. But we're working towards that final goal at the very end. Um, but when she's first found by Val and John Hermes, there's different things going on. By the time she reaches book 4, book 5, when she's introduced by Jordan Nasir, there are different things going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's her second major mentor in the series. We go from one arc to the second arc to the third arc, where she is her own developmental mentor,
Right, right.
much like the Star Wars series. They're shorter books. They're friggin' not as in depth as Star Wars
Sure.
in that kind of setup.
Well, they
But
might be much more in depth than Star Wars, because Star Wars is not a heavy plot.
no, they're pulpy as well, and there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that.
No, there is a delight in pulp, but something. The Portals books are pulpy. Silver and Smith are pulpy, but I still give a heartfelt message to each one, whether it's
Right.
holding
Yeah.
on to wonder or remembering hope is important, or that self-value and putting yourself first in your own life. This is one character's arc through 3 books, and each book he has a little advancement in it, and at the end of book 3 this is something he actively takes on as a goal, instead of just wondering, where do I fit in? Well, I fit in where I
Yeah.
want me to fit in. I'm going to go where I want to go.
But
Mhm.
a big kind of lesson that I learned from like the Marvel Cinematic Universe is they picked like a genre, a kind of story they want to told, and then shoved a character in it,
Mhm.
not the other way around. So
Yeah.
they said, "Hey, we want to tell a spy movie," and then they wrote Winter Soldier,
Yeah.
which is one of the best spy movies, ignoring superheroes, that I've ever seen.
Right.
It was a brilliant way that they kept it fresh.
Right.
Because people are like, how long is the superhero genre going
Mhm.
to stay fresh? Well, what they
Ex-
did was they added a subgenre,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
And they did the same thing with Ant-Man. Ant-Man's a heist movie.
Right.
It just happens to have friggin' Ant-Man and friggin' the Wasp and all that stuff in
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to go, okay, I'm going to tell this kind of movie, and it's just had to have Icarus Black in it, or I'm going to do this one in here. And we're going to, here are my themes. She's the protagonist that's going through these things, but she's got to hit her journey along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Going to read 2 comments from Wordowin real quick. Something he said a few minutes ago is, cliches are a great way to humanize a character. Then he also says, Firefly is an example of a pulpy space opera with a lot of depth. Here's what I'll tell you about that. You can go pulpy. I am a character-driven reader and writer. I want my characters to lead the story. They may start out reacting to the environment, to the story, to the events, but it's their journey. And I want to refer back to the Marvel movies. Iron Man in particular has a similar journey, where each movie, Iron Man 1, 2, and 3, he has a very specific character arc. And they continue that in the Avengers movie. And it's actually beautifully done, especially when you have that many primary characters, to give each character their own arc while still telling the story well of the overarching plot. But they definitely started out with a stereotype for Tony Stark: the rich, greedy, entitled, hedonistic person.
A-hole.
You know,
Yeah. And him breaking out of that stereotype is his arc.
right? And then
Well,
falling back into it and breaking out in a different way.
Sure.
Well, the big thing on him was every time he fails and it personally affects him, he learns a lesson and he makes a correction.
Yeah. Yeah. For
Whether it's friggin' War Machine falling out of the sky, friggin'
Mhm.
you see Peter Parker has a friggin' parachute in his suit.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Very smart. Yeah.
the stupid little things like that. You see one failure leads to the next upgrade to another suit, or friggin' little things like that. I need to build a friggin' shield for the Earth, and he does this. Now it leads to his next failure,
Right.
but he's constantly trying to evolve and make it better.
And this is those things in particular, whether you love the movies or not, it is great writing. Especially since it's not one writer, it is a group of writers, and different ones for each movie, though they might have some overlap. And for them to remember things like that and pull it in, and when you're watching it, it's so seamless you never even realize this
It's
till you
impressive.
do step back and dissect it. Firefly is
Well,
similar. I'm sorry. You want to say something before I
oh,
go into Firefly?
the big one was you could run your heart for 1,000 lifetimes or something really big for 15 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. And that is
Having a
definitely
heart. So,
foreshadowing.
mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful moment. The one I always think about is in Avengers, where in the beginning, well, somewhere near the beginning, Captain America says to Iron Man, "You're not the type to throw yourself on a grenade," and he does.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so Weird Wind says a character that learns from his mistakes. They just happen to make a lot of the mistakes to learn from.
Yeah.
His main character in Wicked is like that, and but with Firefly, this is a great example. Josh Whedon, I admire the man's work. I don't know him personally, so I can't admire him otherwise. But in Firefly, you get this group of stereotypes. Captain Mal is a stereotype. Jane is definitely a stereotype. You know, Wash and I forget. You know, River and the Doctor and what is his XO's name? The one married to Wash,
I haven't seen it.
Zoe.
Oh,
They all start out as stereotypes. You already know the character the first time they're introduced. But as the series goes on through its single season, they each grow. They each at least add layers. Even Jane. And I'm thinking of the episode where he goes to the planet and he's the hero that saved the planet, and the planet kind of worships him. And here he is, this big, dumbling, dumb guy. Michael, have you watched Firefly?
No, I haven't. I've heard good
oh,
things.
you've missed out.
It's worth taking a weekend or a week or a month and going through the episodes. Definitely, it's worth just purchasing outright.
Okay.
It's definitely Wild West. Mandalorian reminds me a lot
Right.
of it in that it's a western set in space. And
Yeah, it's got a very thematic feel.
they
Yeah.
even have cow rustling. It's great. Um,
Haha.
but Jane is this big, dumb brute who's more worried about his penis and what's next on his plate, literally, as in food, than anything else. He likes his gun, he talks to his gun, he names his gun. But you see him grow a little more. And actually, funny enough, I feel like the two characters that drive the season-long plot arc are the least interesting characters, River and Simon, the doctor. Whereas the other characters that are kind of just pushed along in the situation, they're the ones you come to love and adore because they have layers, like human, you, me, layers.
Yeah.
So,
Like ogres.
I like something that you guys said. Both of you said that although like say in your first book someone is the archetypal mentor
mhm.
or someone's the archetypal, they can shift archetypes across books as they developed, and like just because someone's a mentor in one book doesn't mean that that they have nothing left to learn. And I sort of saw that as I was writing Winslow too, because we see Winslow as a young man in the second book, and also even in the present day he has lessons that he needs to learn, and going back into his past sort of does that. And then something else that I thought about when Aaron, when you were giving your awesome pitch for Icarus Black, which is Harry Potter in space, that the marketing aspect of these books, they rely on tropes and archetypes, because what you do with that is you want to paint a picture in as few words as possible, and that's what a pitch does, and that relies on preconceived ideas. Harry Potter in space,
That's true. That's a great point. And something I've learned about older characters, as I myself have gotten older, is there's always room to grow. There's always another lesson you can learn. Whether that character is, if you look at 30 and go, well, that's an adult. Well, there's a lot of fucking lessons to learn at 30. And,
Right.
and some of them are repeat lessons where you've made the same mistake. And once you're 50, there's still lessons to learn. Hopefully you have a certain background where you've learned past a certain point. But there's still other things, even if it's just the bitterness that the world puts on you with the weight of life. Okay, 1 second, Aaron. To still remember to go back and believe in people, to hope, to want something more and drive for it is a lesson in itself. Aaron?
Right.
Norman Lear, okay, who has written everything on TV.
Yeah, like
Okay.
Three's Company. Oh no, that's different, Norman.
Literally everything on TV. Okay, if you're watching TV, he probably wrote it.
Or inspired it.
He's yeah, or inspired it, or the rewrite of it, or something. I think he's 90 now, and he did an interview, and somebody asked him, "Well, have you learned anything?" He's like, "I learn new things all the time. I've learned more since I was from 85 to 90 than I learned from like 70 to 85, and I learned more from there." He's constantly learning.
That's good.
Right. Because the world's just constantly changing.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm trying to say I'm sorry, what?
Oh no, you're good.
Okay. Is don't be afraid to use these tools in your writer's toolbox, to quote Stephen King from On Writing, Memoirs of the Craft. These are tools in your toolbox, and they're worth having and using at the right place. Just to go ahead and skip over a lot of the stuff that you don't have to write if you use this as your place marker, your starting point. People understand that. It's like playing a role-playing game. When you start at level 5 instead of level 1, you're going to have some standard things. Oh, my character has fought goblins, orcs, and skeletons. I understand werewolves have a problem with silver, and undead are afraid of holy stuff. Whereas level 1, your character might not know that, but you can assume this at a higher level. The same with your characters, whether it's age or experience or some combination thereof. But you can still take that stereotype of, I did it with Silver. You know, he's a bit embittered and he doesn't believe that, well, he knows not everybody is good, and generally a lot of people are shit and out for themselves. But he needed that lesson again from Hank of, hey, there's still hope. There's still things to look forward to. And Hank, learning from him, don't worry about what other people think. You don't have to live up to their expectations, only your own. And this is something that will continue for the first couple books as they settle into a more mature and developed character. Not necessarily age-wise, but experience-wise within the books. And I think it's one of the hard things as a writer, or one of the delights as a writer, maybe both, when I'm almost 50, to write a 13-year-old. I've had that experience, but it was a while ago, so I have to empathize to a bit. Michael, when you write a 50-year-old character, you have to put your head in a place it's never been. And all of us as writers, when we're writing about in space or on a fantasy world, we have to put our perception into a world we've never actually experienced. And these tropes and cliches, they help give a base work, a groundwork that we can build on to make it our own.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's a starting point around which your understanding of the character will blossom.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether you're reading it or writing the character, it's fun to go along with it and get to know them.
Now, Joe asked earlier, what about Twilight? Did it break the trope of vampires, making them sparkle in the sunlight? I have thoughts on this, and they're not bad thoughts.
I think what it did was it was a spin on a trope, because the trope is that, you know, sunlight equals bad for vampires, right?
Right.
And so the spin is, oh well, it's not bad in the way that you think. They're not gonna like sizzle. They're going to sparkle, and it will reveal them. So
Right.
yeah.
And I thought that was a very clever way, a very clever take. And as much as, I could pick it apart and complain about it like the majority of people do, I think it was a wonderful twist to make it that writer's own, to take that trope and twist it into something you're like, what? Oh, that's an interesting new take.
Right,
Just
and you're also meant to empathize with these characters, and that's more whimsical than turning into bacon on the sidewalk.
right. Well, also Anne writes with her sexualization of vampires to turn vampires into emotional creatures instead
Mm.
of these
Yeah,
dead
yeah, yeah.
husks that are unfeeling and whatnot. Um,
Yeah, depends on the story. Yeah.
Aaron, I see words on your lips.
Okay, so I actually went ahead and looked this one up because I remember the movie.
Mm.
Okay, in the movie we have Gary Oldman appear in daylight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
as Dracula, and they make a comment about friggin' his power greatly reduced.
Right, which is the
Um,
original mythology from Bram Stoker.
correct. And then and then Bram Stoker in his older form shaving Harker in the morning hours as well.
Right.
So he appears twice in the movie in daylight. So they're not. Daylight wasn't a killer for vampires, at least within canon.
They just had greater power within the dark.
Right. Well, the creatures of the night thing, where they could change into bats, into wolves, into the mist, and all that kind of stuff. I think the big thing that we kind of turned them into the blood sucking fiends of the night was really the Marvel comics of the '60s and '70s, where everything became kind of public domain at that point. Because that's where it entered public domain.
Right.
So your Bela Lugosi's and stuff like that. That's where we started to get the feel of, oh, now they can't be out at night. So I don't think Twilight really broke canon. It just broke that common. It broke trope, but not canon.
I guess it's just like the most when it enters that public domain, the most popular sort of ideas kind of compete within that space, and then what you have chiseled or polished out of that becomes an archetype.
Well, right. What's widely accepted out there?
Yeah.
It's kind of like Batman. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are the first few Batmans that came out? All right.
Batman's Jekyll and Hyde.
Well, my thing here is like Val Kilmer. There's a scene with Val Kilmer's Batman where Val Kilmer in the Batman costume smiles. I hate that scene because Batman does not smile.
Unless it was a grimace.
Right, no, but he actually
Yeah.
does one of those. No.
Interesting. Yeah.
And it's it's thematically incorrect.
Yeah, it doesn't jive with you because it's as much like what a character is not can be an archetype as much as what they are.
Right.
Yeah.
It breaks one of the fundamental rules.
Not smile.
Yeah, Batman's an interesting, and it's almost time to wrap this up, but Batman is an interesting blend of other tropes. I mentioned Jekyll and Hyde, where when he puts on the costume, he is the monster.
Well, he's his true self.
Oh, yeah, okay. Perhaps the rich guy is the monster?
The rich guy is a persona.
Is the mask.
Taken on to hide his true self.
But also,
that's true.
Batman very much follows the vampire mythos.
Mm-hmm.
You know, surviving off fear and power in the dark and misdirection and that sort of thing. And we could do a whole show on vampires because I definitely have some good thoughts on those.
Yeah. I just recently watched Mark of the Vampire for the first time.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
It's also Bela Lugosi.
Okay, I might have seen it then.
Yeah.
If you ever get a chance, watch Nosferatu. Very fun.
Yeah, Nosferatu. Yeah, that's good.
And then watch the Eddie Izzard vampire movie. Was Keanu Reeves in that one? I don't know. Where basically they're making the movie of Dracula as a vampire actually happens during the movie. And Eddie Izzard plays Jonathan Harkins. And when interviewed afterwards, he's like, the hardest part of an actor in this movie was playing a bad actor.
Interesting.
So, closing thoughts or a recap on previous thoughts on this topic.
I think that I think one of my favorite points was that the stereotype or the trope, archetype is a great starting point, and then from that, the specificity about the character or about your story, the thing that makes it unique, it blossoms or spirals out. um and in that but it's a great tool for marketing too, that you can tap into these things that are that exist in the public consciousness, that quickly reference, like, how interesting is it that you can say Harry Potter? I'm sure within Harry Potter you have tropes that, they become specific, but you
Harry
mentioned
Potter
Harry
actually has the same fantasy tropes: the young boy, the magical thing, the
Yeah,
elderly wizard mentor.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And then you take that, and then that immediately puts an image, or like even a vibe. It doesn't even need to be an image, it could just be like a feeling into your potential reader's mind, uh, as a pitch for your upcoming book. So it's a powerful tool. It's a powerful starting point, off of which the specificity of your stuff can bloom.
Aaron?
And the big takeaway from that is how you twist it.
Yeah.
What have I done to change that up? One, Icarus Black it's a girl's journey.
Right.
To begin with, Icarus Black is a girl. Starts off 10, 11 years old. Um, our secondary characters, Spaceship Val.
Hmm.
We begin with John Hermes. John Hermes is our first mentor. We're taking it over 9 books, but things are going to change along the way. We're more, yes, it's Harry Potter in space, but what's the difference here?
But it's not Harry
What?
Potter.
How is this different from?
Right.
It's going to be neat looking back, when it's done, from where you started, and what the idea is to as you get to know it, and what surprises you about it. It's going to be really cool, and we have these snapshots in time that you can reference.
My closing thoughts on the topic is kind of what Michael said. Your cliches, tropes, archetypes, stereotypes, these are all comfort food. These are things you know. This is your meatloaf and potatoes, and that's what you start with. And then you build from there. And by the end of your character's journey, it is filet mignon, or it's eating out of a trash can, or whatever your journey was. These
Delicious.
are tools to be used, but if you try to write a whole story clinging to only these and never branching away from them, you will create mush. It's going to be a school lunchroom meal. It's not going to be anything special. It might hit all the points that everybody recognizes as, yes, that fits the genre, but it's not going to be special and unique. And for anybody out there that says, I can't write anything original, which is what a lot of newer writers cry about, and I literally mean cry, like tears, frustration, it's okay. Realize starting there is fine. It's what you do after that matters.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to wrap this up then. I'm going to check the mailbag, see if we got any emails. Nothing for this week. I want to thank everybody for hanging out. If you do want to send us a message with some of the thoughts on the topic, or a message that somebody you want to shout out for, or birthday wishes, you can email us at writenightshow@gmail.com. That's WRITENIGHT, just like the show name, writenightshow@gmail.com, and we will do that. That's real quick. Weird Wind throws in, new writers were saying that 1,000 years ago. I am pretty sure fucking William Shakespeare went, there's no new ideas. Yeah. Thank you guys who joined us in chat, all of our subscribers who have supported the show, everybody who threw bits, subscribed, followed, bought merch, rated and hosted. Thank you so much. Thank you for Ethan Strauss and Triple U who support us on Patreon every month with their subscription, and Musical Wizardry and Berta who support us on PayPal with their monthly subscription there. Guys, you have a great night. We will see you on the next episode of Right Night. We're out of here.
Thank you for joining author Travis I. Sivart and the other writers, content creators, and all-around amazing people for our discussion here on writing. Join us again soon, and until you do, make sure you create with passion, enjoy the journey, and remember, every night can be writing.